Okay, so get this. We're diving deep into the world of Mauro Brocca.
Mauro Brocca.
Yeah.
Okay.
This Italian life coach who claims he can figure out what's wrong with someone just by looking at them.
Wow.
It sounds a little out there.
Mm,
I know, but the guy's got a serious following.
really?
Yeah, we've got his website, a blog post mentioning his techniques,
Uh-huh.
and even a YouTube interview where he talks about his journey.
Fascinating. So we've got a lot to work with.
Yeah,
Okay.
it is definitely
He
intriguing.
calls himself a life and mental coach,
Mm,
an expert in deep hypnosis.
right,
But then there's this whole operator real thing on his website.
right.
Like, what even is that?
It's like a secret society
Yeah,
or something,
yeah.
but okay.
Right.
Before we get lost in the mystery, let's back up.
Okay.
Who is this guy?
Yeah.
The YouTube interview paints a pretty interesting picture.
Fill me in.
Small-town Italian kid starts reading psychology books in the 70s,
Okay.
realizes traditional wisdom isn't cutting it.
Right. Very relatable.
Yeah,
So that kicks off a lifelong obsession with figuring out how the mind really works.
yeah.
He even says in the interview that he wasn't interested in just theories.
Mhm.
He wanted practical tools to actually help people.
That's interesting. So that led him to neuro-linguistic programming,
NLP.
NLP, right?
Yeah.
The blog post mentions that he uses techniques like morfopsicologia.
Morfopsicologia, which
Yeah.
is basically analyzing personality through facial features.
Uh-huh.
So is this where the detective thing comes in?
It seems like Brocca believes that we're constantly communicating unconsciously,
Oh, interesting.
whether it's through our facial expressions, our clothes,
Right.
even how we walk.
Wow.
He's essentially piecing together all these subtle clues
Wow.
to understand what's going on beneath the surface.
It's kind of freaky, right?
It is a little bit, yeah.
Like imagine someone being able to see right through your carefully crafted persona and knowing all your hidden insecurities.
Well, in the interview, Brocca says he can often tell what's wrong with someone before they even say a word.
He compares it to reading a computer program, looking for the glitches in the code.
Oh, wow. So speaking of code, we've got to crack this operatory real code.
Right.
His website mentions energy rebalancing as part of what he does.
Okay.
Could that be the key?
It's possible.
Yeah.
And that makes his whole approach even more interesting.
Yeah.
It's not just about observing behavior. It's about understanding the energy behind it.
Right.
He seems to blend psychology, NLP, and maybe even some sort of energy work.
Okay, this is where my brain starts to melt a little.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in.
But before we dive into the energy vortex,
Okay.
let's take a step back.
All right.
We've established that Brocca is not your average life coach.
Definitely not.
He's got this whole detective meets mind hacker vibe going on.
Yeah, I like that.
But what does he actually do with all this information?
Well, his website and interview mentioned that he works with a variety of people, professionals, students, people going through major life changes.
Okay.
He helps them overcome challenges, make decisions, basically navigate the complexities of life.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But what's interesting is that he emphasizes uncovering hidden truths.
Like the stuff we're not even aware of ourselves.
Exactly. He even mentions that people often lie to psychologists.
Really?
Maybe out of shame or fear.
Interesting.
But he believes that by observing these unconscious cues, he can help people confront those deeper issues without them having to explicitly talk about them.
Okay, that is both fascinating and slightly terrifying.
I know, right?
It's like he's bypassing our conscious defenses and going straight to the source code.
And that's where the operator real thing might come in.
Okay.
If he's working with energy, maybe it's about more than just understanding the problem. It's about actually shifting the energy to create real change.
All right. I'm officially hooked.
Me too.
So we've got this mystery man who can supposedly read your mind by looking at your face and then rewire your energy to solve your problems.
It's a compelling story.
What's not to love?
Well, there are some pretty big questions here, too.
Like
How accurate is this morphopsicologia stuff anyway?
right.
And what are the ethical implications of someone being able to read you like a book?
Yeah.
We've got a lot more to unpack here.
Okay, let's do it.
It's both fascinating and a little unsettling, right?
Yeah.
To think that our faces could be like open books revealing secrets
Yeah.
we might not even know about ourselves.
Okay, but let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
How much can you really tell about someone just by looking at their face?
Right.
I mean, isn't that getting into some pretty shaky territory?
Well, that's where the whole debate about morphopsychology gets interesting.
Okay.
Remember, it's rooted in these ancient ideas about physiognomy, which tried to link physical features to character, but back then it wasn't exactly scientific.
So like saying someone with a big nose is destined to be a leader?
Yeah,
Come on, that's just stereotyping.
exactly. Modern morfopsicologia tries to distance itself from those simplistic interpretations.
Okay.
It's more about recognizing patterns and tendencies, not making absolute judgments.
Okay, so it's not fortune telling, but more like personality profiling based on facial features.
You could say that, and it's not about saying, oh, you have this feature, therefore you must be this type of person.
Right.
It's more nuanced than that.
So how does Broca fit into all this?
Yeah.
The blog post mentions observing the structure of the face, the sensory receptors, even something about 3 planes of the face.
Uh-huh.
It sounds pretty complicated.
It does. And while we don't have all the details of his method,
Right.
you can bet he's not just glancing at someone's forehead and making a snap judgment.
Right.
He spent years studying this stuff, developing his own system.
It's like he's looking at a face and seeing a whole life story unfold, right?
Yep.
All the experiences, the emotions, the personality traits. It's like reading a biography written on someone's skin.
And remember, he's not just looking at faces in isolation.
Right.
He's taking in everything, body language, choice of words, the way someone holds themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's a whole person approach.
So he's like a human lie detector, a master of micro-expressions, a facial code breaker. I'm starting to run out of metaphors here.
I think you've covered most of them.
But the big question is, what does he actually do with this information?
Well, from what we gather from his website in the interview, he's essentially helping people become more aware of themselves.
Okay.
He's showing them the patterns in their thinking, the unconscious beliefs that might be holding them back.
Like the self-sabotaging behaviors we all have but don't even realize?
Exactly. And remember he talked about how people often lie to therapists?
Right.
They might not even be consciously trying to deceive, but they're putting on a facade,
Uh-huh.
even to themselves.
Yeah.
Brocca's approach seems to bypass all that.
So instead of spending years in therapy trying to dig up your childhood trauma, he can just look at your face and tell you what's wrong.
Well, it's not about just telling someone what's wrong.
Okay.
It's about helping them see it for themselves.
Got it.
He's like a mirror, reflecting back those hidden parts of ourselves.
Right.
So we can finally confront them.
And this is where the whole energy rebalancing thing comes in, right?
Yeah, it seems like it. He's not just analyzing the problem.
Mm-hmm.
He's working with the energy behind it.
So is he actually doing some sort of hands-on healing?
That's not clear from the sources we have.
Okay.
But remember, he calls himself an operator real,
Right.
and his website mentions energy rebalancing life algorithm.
Yeah.
It definitely suggests that there's more to his approach than just observation and analysis.
Right. This whole real mystery is killing me.
I know, it's very intriguing.
What if it stands for something like releasing emotional algorithms for life?
Ooh, that's good.
Or maybe recalibrating energy and aligning life?
I like that one too.
I'm just throwing stuff out there now.
We might never know for sure unless we ask him directly.
Right?
But the important thing is that it points to a key aspect of his work.
Yeah. What's that?
It's not just about understanding the mind, it's about working with the energy that drives our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors.
Okay, so we've established that Brocca is not just a life coach. He's an energy coach, a code rewriter, a facial detective. The list goes on.
He wears many hats.
But before we get lost in the woo-woo,
Okay.
let's bring it back to reality.
Right.
How practical is all this? Can you really change your life just by tweaking your energy?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't
Yeah.
it? And it's something we can explore further.
Okay.
His website features testimonials from clients who claim to have experienced significant changes in their lives.
But testimonials are one thing, right? We don't have any scientific studies to back up his claims.
That's true. But there's a growing body of research on the mind-body connection and the power of energy healing.
Uh-huh.
So while Brocca's approach might seem unconventional,
Right.
it's not entirely out there.
Okay, fair enough. But even if we accept that energy healing is a real thing,
Yeah.
how much of it is actually due to Brocca's unique method?
Right.
Is it the facial analysis, the NLP, the energy work, or some combination of all of the above?
That's a great question. And it's one we'd need more information to answer definitively.
Yeah.
But it's clear that Brocca has developed a very specific and personalized approach,
Right.
drawing from a wide range of disciplines.
So it's not just a one-size-fits-all solution.
Definitely not.
He's tailoring his approach to each individual based on what he sees in their face, their energy, their whole being.
Exactly.
It's like he's creating a custom-made program for each client.
Exactly. And that's what makes him so intriguing.
Yeah.
He's not just following a script or a set of rules.
Right.
He's using his intuition, his knowledge, and his years of experience to create something truly unique.
Oh, I'm sold.
Uh-huh.
But before I book my flight to Italy for a face reading and energy makeover, let's talk about the elephant in the room.
Oh. Now,
The ethical implications of all this.
that's an important point. We've been so caught up in the fascinating aspects of Brocca's work
Yeah.
that we haven't really addressed the potential downsides.
Like, what if someone doesn't want their face read? What if they feel violated by having their innermost thoughts and feelings exposed?
Right.
Is there a risk of manipulation or exploitation here?
Those are all valid concerns.
Yeah.
And it highlights the importance of informed consent and ethical boundaries.
Yeah.
If someone is going to work with Brocca,
Right.
they need to understand what they're getting into.
And it goes beyond just individual clients, right?
Right.
What if these techniques were used in other contexts, like job interviews or criminal investigations?
Right.
That could get really scary really fast.
Absolutely. There's a fine line between understanding human behavior and exploiting it.
Right.
And as with any powerful tool, there's always the potential for misuse.
So we've gone from a fascination to a little bit of fear here.
It's a slippery slope.
But before we spiral into a dystopian nightmare, let's take a breath and bring it back to the core of what we're exploring.
Okay.
We're trying to understand Mauro Brocca, his unique approach,
Yeah.
and what it might tell us about the hidden workings of the human mind and spirit. And whether we agree with his methods or not, there's no denying that he's raising some important questions about self-awareness and the power of nonverbal communication and the potential for human transformation.
Exactly. And those questions are worth pondering,
Yeah.
even if we don't have all the answers.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about Brocca's background, his techniques, the potential benefits and drawbacks of his approach, and the ethical considerations.
Right.
But there's one thing we haven't really dug into yet, the actual science behind morphopsicologia.
That's a great point.
We've been talking about it in a theoretical sense,
Right.
but what does the research actually say about the link between facial features and personality?
Yeah, we need to look into that.
That's where we'll pick up in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll explore the history of morphopsicologia, the scientific evidence, and what it might reveal about the secrets hidden within our faces.
Stay tuned. We're about to get even deeper.
All right, so we've been on this deep dive into Mauro Brocca's world, and things just keep getting more interesting.
Yeah, it's a wild ride.
But we have to address the elephant in the room.
Okay. What's that?
How much of this morphopsicologia stuff is actually backed by science?
Right.
I mean, it sounds cool, but is there real evidence to support it?
That's the million-dollar question. And honestly, it's a bit of a mixed bag.
Okay, how?
So, you see, morphopsicologia walks this line between ancient wisdom and modern science. It draws from traditions like physiognomy, which has been around for centuries.
Right.
But as we discussed earlier, those early interpretations weren't exactly rigorous.
Right, like the whole big nose equals big ambition thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Today's morphopsicologia tries to take a more nuanced approach,
Well,
focusing on observable correlations between facial features and personality tendencies.
gotcha.
But even then, the scientific community is still pretty divided on its validity.
So on one hand, you've got people saying you can read someone's personality like a map on their face. And on the other hand, you've got skeptics saying it's all just a bunch of hooey.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Some studies have shown that certain facial features might be linked to specific personality traits,
Oh, really?
like how people perceive trustworthiness or dominance.
Okay.
But these findings are often based on small sample sizes and subjective interpretations.
That's not like there's a definitive morphopsicology for dummies guide that you can follow to decode anyone's personality.
Definitely not. Even if there are correlations, it's important to remember that correlation doesn't equal causation.
Right.
Just because someone has a certain facial feature doesn't automatically mean they'll have a specific personality trait.
Right.
There are so many other factors at play: genetics, upbringing, life experiences.
So it's more like morphopsicology might give you some hints or clues about someone's tendencies,
Yeah,
but it's not a crystal ball.
that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Think of it like this. You meet someone for the first time,
Yeah.
and you get first impression based on their appearance, their body language, the way they speak. Morphopsicology is kind of like adding another layer to that initial assessment.
Okay, that makes sense. But how does this all tie back to Mauro Brocca?
Right.
We know he's a big believer in morphopsicologia.
Yeah.
But what exactly is he looking for?
Unfortunately, the sources we have don't go into a ton of detail about his specific techniques.
Okay.
But based on what we do know, it seems like he's looking for those subtle cues in facial features
Yeah.
that might reveal something about a person's underlying personality,
Okay.
their emotional patterns, maybe even their hidden struggles.
So he's not just looking at the shape of someone's nose or the size of their ears.
No, it's much more than that.
He's looking at the whole picture, the lines, the textures, the expressions.
Right.
It's like he's studying a work of art, searching for the hidden meaning beneath the surface.
And remember, he's combining those observations with all the other information he's gathering.
Right.
Their body language, their choice of words, their energy. It's not just about morfopsicologia in isolation. It's about weaving it into his overall assessment of the individual.
So it's like he's putting together a puzzle with each piece representing a different aspect of the person's being.
Yeah.
The facial features are just one piece of the puzzle,
Right.
but they can provide valuable insights.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as with any puzzle, the more pieces you have, the clearer the picture becomes.
Right.
But even then, there's always an element of interpretation involved.
Which brings us back to the question of accuracy, right? How can we be sure that Brocca's interpretations are actually correct?
Well, that's where things get tricky. Without more data, more research,
Right.
it's impossible to say for sure.
Okay.
But it's worth noting that Brocca has been doing this for decades.
Uh-huh.
He's worked with countless individuals,
Right.
and he's developed his own system based on his observations and experiences.
So it's not just based on some textbook knowledge of morphopsicology.
No, not at all.
It's his own unique approach honed over years of practice.
Exactly. And whether or not you buy into the whole morphopsicologia thing,
Right.
there's something to be said for experience and intuition.
That's true.
Brocca has clearly dedicated his life to understanding human nature, and he's developed a deep understanding of the subtle ways we communicate.
Okay, so even if we're not ready to declare morphopsicologia a foolproof science,
Yeah.
it's clear that it can be a valuable tool for someone like Brocca, who's
Well-
already skilled at reading people.
Absolutely. And for us as listeners, I think the takeaway here is that there's always more to learn about ourselves and others.
Right.
Maybe morphopsicology isn't the answer to all our problems,
Yeah,
but it does make you think about how much we reveal through our faces,
it really does.
even when we're not consciously aware of it.
It's like a reminder to pay attention to those subtle cues, to be more mindful of how we're presenting ourselves to the world.
Exactly.
And maybe even to be a little more curious about what those cues might be saying about us.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
So there you have it. We've delved into the world of Mauro Brocca,
This fascinating and somewhat enigmatic figure.
who's combined psychology, NLP, energy work, and even a dash of morphopsicologia to create his own unique approach to helping people.
And we've explored the science, the mystery, the potential benefits, and the ethical considerations.
And while we may not have all the answers, we hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity,
It definitely has for me.
challenged your assumptions, and maybe even inspired you to pay a little closer attention to the faces around you.
Because who knows, you might be surprised by what you discover.
Exactly.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning.
And keep diving deep into the mysteries of the human experience.
See you next time.